Welcome back to the Energized Woman podcast. Today, I want to talk about a topic that's been up for me lately, and it's the topic of worrying. The kind of worry that steals your sleep, that steals your energy, and the worry about things that you can't actually control. Does anyone know what I mean? If you've ever replayed a conversation in your head for days or obsessed over any possible what if scenario for an upcoming trip, for a presentation, for a flight, for a difficult decision, anything at all, then you're not alone. We'll start with how this kind of worry shows up, then what it does to your nervous system, your energy level, and your health. And then I'll share a few simple things you can do in the moment when you find yourself stressing over something that you have no control over. Let me start out with a recent real life example and how far this can go if we don't intervene in time. I had a situation with a family member that was going to have a medical procedure done, and they live in Germany. They're not in the US where I am. While it was a routine procedure, I was really concerned about it. It was stressing me out, right? I was in a cycle of worrying about every little thing, whether I should go, whether I should be there, whether I should not go, what are the pros, what are the cons all the of all the steps. I didn't know what to do, right? So I went so far as to email their doctor, their surgeon, to find out information about the surgery. Of course, surgeons aren't going to give me that kind of information, especially if they don't know who I am. They came back with a very nice, vague, generic statement that it's a routine procedure that has risks like any other procedure. Okay, fine. That was not helpful. But I don't know what I expected. I expected certainty. I wanted to know the answer. I wanted certainty, right? And anytime we don't have certainty, the mind can really go down a rabbit hole of all the scenarios that could potentially happen. And in this case, so it was that. Then I started thinking about, well, if I go, we're going into the fall. I've heard a lot of people being sick, a lot of people having the flu. So now I'm going to be on a plane, and then I will see this person who has already got a lot of health issues right before a surgery when I roll off a plane. Maybe that isn't the smartest thing to do, right? Because there wasn't enough time to where we could know if I was getting sick or not, right? So I was stressing about that. Like I said, all these people, yes, I can wear masks, yes, I can do all the things, right? But we're stuck in a metal tin can for 10 hours together. And that means I can get all kinds of bacteria and viruses. And maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I shouldn't be getting them sick right before their surgery. And, you know, maybe I should go quarantine somewhere just in case and then see them after the surgery. I went through all kinds of scenarios. When I finally got around to checking flights, I realized there were no flights that would get me there in time anyway. I live in the Pacific Northwest. Where we are, we don't have access to daily flights to Germany. And I mean, I probably could make it work somewhere if I flew halfway around the country, but it wasn't going to do that. I missed my window. I just worried about all these things before even thinking about the things that I can control, like booking a flight, actually getting there, actually taking the steps to get there, right? I went through all this mental hoops ahead of time, only to find out, well, the logistics are actually not going to work. And everything went well. The procedure was fine. The person's okay. But I made myself crazy over whether or not I should go, what could happen along the way, all the different scenarios. Could I get sick on this flight? Could I get them sick before their surgery? What is that going to do to them? It didn't help my situation at all. And it really didn't help me make a decent decision. All it did is stress me out, and it kept me in a highly activated, stressed out state for about a week, right up until the day after the surgery, where I knew they were fine and I could move on with my life. But all of that was, as I said, all of that was driven by uncertainty and not knowing, right? I don't do well with the not knowing space. It depends on what it is. Some things I've gotten okay with, but in this particular case, when it's someone really dear to me, I don't do well with that. So I'm still learning, right? I have all these tools, and in those moments, I struggle as well. And I realized I did have a choice to intervene earlier. Once I knew, realized I was going down a rabbit hole and noticing that this type of thinking wasn't helpful, but I missed it. In that case, I completely missed that opportunity. I could have used any of my somatic tools, and I didn't. And once I heard that the surgery was well, I finally relaxed and I collapsed and slept for a long time to catch up. That whole week was completely unnecessary suffering that I could have navigated much better if I had used the tools that I talk about here, right? If I had used and intervened at an earlier point. But it happened at a time where I had just had a concussion. Concussions and certain kinds of things keep your sympathetic nervous system in a very activated state. So I was already on high alert, and it was easy to go down that spiral. Do you relate at all? Maybe you have your own version of this, of worrying about something that may or may not happen in the future. And you have all these scenarios that are playing out in your head. And you might have an important presentation coming up, or a job interview, or specific tasks at work that you don't enjoy doing that you know you have to do and you're dreading it. Or maybe you're planning a trip and you're afraid of flying, right? All kinds of things that we could be worrying about. What are other people going to say if I tell them what I have to tell them? Sometimes that can be a really big stressor when you know you have to address something with your partner, with your child, with a loved one, and you don't know how they're going to take it. That can go into all kinds of scenarios. I do a version of this with silly little things on a daily basis, right? Which is why I need this reminder for myself. And I also want to share it with you. Because right now I have a conversation coming up that where I have no idea how the other person is going to respond. And my mind has been circling through scenarios of what they will say, how they will react, and what will be the outcome of this conversation. And then when I think about it, my body tenses up, my shoulders come up, right? Like I have a lot of tension in my upper back, my shoulders, my neck hurts, I get a headache. All these things start happening, and I'm going down a rabbit hole if I don't catch myself in time. Let's take a look why that happens. And here's the thing, this is not a willpower thing. Let's take a look at what this kind of worry does in your nervous system. Because for those of us who have had a history of getting overwhelmed, of struggling with things with high stress, and the nervous system is already in high alert, then we have this negativity bias, meaning our brain scans for danger. So if we're already stressed, it scans for danger even more. And it keeps us in a loop of continuously scanning for danger. So it doesn't ever calm down and rest. If I have these circling thoughts, the brain just keeps on going because the thoughts keep on feeding it, and then it keeps on triggering a stress response. That is all great when we are in actual danger, right? If I'm out in the woods walking and a bear comes up, that is a good thing to have that kind of response, to have hormones kick up because I want to be able to run or play dead or something, whatever is appropriate when you encounter a bear. And I want to be able to do something. I want to be able to take the right action. And so the hormones they're being put out by my system are going to help me make that happen. Now, on a daily basis, that isn't necessary, right? And we find that the way we live our lives nowadays, with constant activation through social media, through the news, work and responsibilities, all the things we do, is our brain doesn't really get to calm down anymore. And it keeps sending those signals. And so our nervous systems are in a much higher activated state a lot of the time. And at a certain point, when we're in this enough, it can send us into this overwhelm, and that can be a freeze state. So that's the state where you just kind of numb out. You go to sleep, or you grab your phone and you start scrolling because you just need to not deal, right? You just need to not deal. And or you grab a glass of wine, whatever it may be. We all have coping mechanisms that we use to deal with that particular freeze state. And from there, it's hard to get up in the morning because everything feels really heavy. You hit snooze a bunch of times. You're not as resilient as you know you can be and as you'd like to be. And little things put you over the edge. So once you're in that freeze mode, your body has taken over. You're no longer in control, and because now your biology has taken over. So at that point, there's no amount of willpower and thinking your way out of it. At that point, we need to go to the body and we need to work with the system and give it time. So unfortunately, that is the way. If we miss the point of intervention, then the biology of our body just takes over and does its thing and goes through the freeze until it comes back out. But the good news is we can intervene at an earlier point. When we catch it in time, we can intervene and we can practice being able to stay with this freeze and overwhelm for longer periods of time so that we can be present to life and can continue to make decisions and have choice over how we respond. Am I actually really picking up the phone and scrolling, or am I going to do something productive? Am I grabbing that glass of wine to take the edge off, or am I going to do something a little more productive? Right? So it's the choice that we want. We want to have that choice point and not just automatically do something that makes me feel better in the moment. So to start the process earlier, we have to get good at just like stepping in sooner and recognizing when that point is. Because once we get to that point, we're not in control anymore, right? Your system needs time to get back out of that state. So it's that kind of worrying that really isn't helping, right? The things that we can't control, like, for example, something that's always in the back of my mind. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and we live in a subduction zone, which means there could be earthquakes, and there could be pretty big, devastating earthquakes. I've never lived in an actual earthquake zone, and I'm realizing it stresses me out, right? The thought of it, for some reason, that an earthquake could hit comes in and out a fair amount. And once in a while, I go down a spiral. Usually I catch it when I realize it, but once in a while, this happens. And it's not one bit helpful, right? Nothing, it accomplishes nothing. But here we are. And I do notice that happens when I'm already not feeling resilient, when I'm already stressed out, when I'm already pushing through. And I'm stressing about other things and I'm not really tuning into my body as much as I could be. And then I'm less resilient, and those kinds of things can take hold easier. This type of anxiety is not particularly fun to live with. And it just doesn't serve. It doesn't help us in any way. It just keeps the system in a more chronically activated state. And that, when it's chronically activated in that state, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when we put ourselves on a road to disease, right? Diabetes, heart disease, other issues that might be happening down the road. But first, it zaps your energy. So if you're feeling low in energy, take a moment to notice what do you worry about? What are there things that you worry about that you actually have no control over? And don't worry, I'm not going to say just let it go, because something that would just drive me crazy is in the self-help industry, right? People would always say, just let it go, just let it go, just meditate. But with all that's happening biologically, meditation in a moment like that's actually pretty impossible, because your body's doing what it's doing and your mind won't let you. So yes, we want to let it go, but there's specific steps to do that, because that is something that would drive me crazy all these years, hearing that just let it go, let it go. How do I let it go? What do you mean let it go? I can't let it go. So there's specific steps, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because I know how many people right now are struggling. There's daily news that could potentially be really upsetting, right? There's all the things that you follow and you see that's going on, and you're actually on it and you're following it, and you're also looking at social media. That can be really, really stressful. It's so easy to worry about all these things that are completely out of our control. So if you find yourself going down that spiral like I have, because of what you're seeing on social media, on the news, or because something that's happening in your life, something that's coming up where you're just really in a worry state about it, then everything I'm sharing here applies to that as well. These same practices that I'm going to be talking about in a moment can help your system come back to a sense of safety, because really what it is when we have that uncertainty and we start going down, it's your brain is starting to scan for danger and your body doesn't feel safe. So you can tell yourself I'm safe, but that isn't actually going to make much of a difference, right? We really need to be working with the body to get your system and your body to understand I am safe, and then it can relax. No amount of thinking your way into it or out of it is going to help you do that. So, in order to stay out of that and not get roped into constant worry and have that be a daily thing, we need to build capacity, the capacity to hold more. And that is absolutely doable. A body needs energy to be able to do that. It's a process that can be learned. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is doable. I have a group program where this is one of the things we're focusing on. So we don't keep bouncing back and forth between the overwhelm freeze state and the sympathetic activation state. We'll learn how to build the capacity to be present and to stay present. If that is of interest to you, my calendar link is in the show notes. Just go ahead and click on that and schedule a 30-minute complimentary session with me, and I can tell you more about what that looks like. And we can see if that would be something that would be helpful to you. Let's come back to the earthquake example for a moment, because that's been somehow on my mind a lot lately. At the same time, I also have normal life stressors happening and some big choices that I'm about to make. So, right now, it feels like a lot in my life. A lot of really sort of existential topics are up for me. And that brings up some protective parts that are wanting to keep me safe. We have these internal parts that pipe up that don't want us to rest, that keep us from resting, keep us from doing the things that would actually be helpful, because they're afraid of something and they're trying to protect you from something. And I'm noticing that that is happening because I'm realizing some symptoms that I haven't had in a while, right? Level of inflammation is a bit higher. And I'm noticing little aches and pains that I didn't have just a few weeks ago. And I know that is all related to how I'm letting my mind go into these places. So when I'm able to catch it and I'm able to intervene earlier before it gets me into that freeze state, I can reduce some of that physical impact and reduce the inflammation. Like today, I am not feeling that, right? My joints feel amazing today. It reduces that overall inflammation and the oxidative stress in our body, and we feel better overall. So, this is not only to not be in a state that is not enjoyable when we're in anxiety, but also to actually help us keep our energy levels up, live longer, and stay healthy while we're alive. So, building that capacity is really important. It gives us the energy that we need to deal with whatever comes our way. Because here's the thing, we can never take out all the stressors, right? Life is going to happen. And I see this tendency in a lot of circles these days where it's like this, just like protect yourself as much as possible, remove this, remove that, remove all the things, and then your life becomes really small. You can do that, but it actually doesn't build capacity. It actually makes things worse. It makes you less able to deal with things and less resilient. So we don't really want to take that approach of shutting everything out, making sure people respond a certain way, and have our environment needs to be just so we can cope. But rather, we want to increase our capacity so that we can deal with all the things that come at us, because they're going to keep coming, right? It's life. It's just what happens. And we need to be able to function through that without pushing ourselves, because that's what's gotten us in this mess to begin with, the constant pushing and the constant ignoring of signals and plowing through. Well, how do you know your body is low in energy besides just actually feeling less energy? It's things like brain fog, right? You have a hard time focusing, you have a hard time remembering things. That brain fog I mentioned, there might be an experience of numbness or tingling in parts of your body. Maybe your muscles feel really heavy or weak and or sore. And You might be experiencing gut symptoms like bloating or food sensitivities or inflammation. And it may no longer be as easy to control your weight. So, when our physical body is low in energy, we have a hard time dealing with stress, and we just don't have enough energy to then also work out and move. Little things start overwhelming us or stressing us. I don't know if you've noticed that when you get to a certain point in life, and all of a sudden things annoy you that didn't annoy you in the past, right? All of a sudden you're more snappy with loved ones, you're more harsh with coworkers, whatever it might be. It just your tolerance level is way lower. I remember a moment I had about 10 years ago. I was needing to fill up my car, so I drove up to a gas station and I was putting my credit card into the card reader. And I don't remember the details exactly, but something was the prompts weren't working and it wasn't working. In the end, it asked me to go inside and talk to the cashier. And I just had a total meltdown over that when, which was completely out of proportion to what was actually happening, right? Completely out of proportion. And I remember I had this sort of out of body moment, kind of watching myself going, what are you doing? Like what is happening right now? This is in no this reaction is in no relation to go check in with the cashier, right? Like it's just in no relation. And that was one of the moments where I was like, oh, I really need to make some changes. So that's what I mean with not having the capacity to just deal with little things that come up. It's important to know how to work with getting energy back into your system, which is part of the program that I help people with. There's some things that you can do immediately that I will share today. Part of that is learning to stop pushing through. That's a tough one for so many of us, those of us who are so used to over functioning all the time and making sure we've got all our bases covered and making sure everyone's okay and taking responsibility for all the things. It's hard to slow down. It's hard because we think everything's going to come undone, but we need to stop pushing through and we need to start taking the time to actually listen to our body. The reality is we've become so used to pushing through our limits, right? Pushing through, we're hungry, I'm going to eat later, like power through my lunch break. And then in the evening, you like get to a point where all of a sudden you grab anything that is in sight just because you're starving. So we're so used to pushing ourselves. There's these self-imposed expectations, societal expectations. We need to get into the habit of normalizing that we have needs and our body has signals. And the reason we're tired or we have a certain symptom is our body trying to get our attention and trying to tell us, hey, I need something. Take note, just pay attention for a moment. And, the body has been giving us these signals all along. We're just so used to pushing through them, pushing through hunger, pushing through tiredness and not sleeping. Instead, we'll have another cup of coffee so I can keep going. And eventually, the body's messages become a little less subtle, right? They're a little more in your face and a little less to ignore. And all of a sudden, there are things that you have to deal with. Now, I want to give you a few practical things you can do in the moment when the worrying is happening so that we don't have to get on that track, right? We learn to increase the capacity, which will improve our relationships, which will improve our health, and will improve our energy levels. And the things we talk about, they're really, really simple. It's just remembering them in the moment is where we need to practice and actually allowing ourselves the time to do it. Now, I want to give you a few practical things that you can do in the moment when the worrying is starting up and you're obsessing over something that is out of your control. For me, when it's about anxiety and worrying, I need to move. I need to move my body. I might, even when I'm sitting down, I might shake or shimmy, like shaking that I initiate from my core, or you can also just shake your entire body. Or if I have the time to go for a walk, I'll go for a walk. Or I might just do a few quick, if I'm in between meetings and I'm noticing this, I might just do a quick few jumping jacks to move my body and move the energy a little bit. It just helps the body move through any excess hormones that are there that are kind of getting stuck there if we don't move them out. It also helps me breathe deeper, which helps my nervous system calm. So I started to intentionally shake because, like, I used to try to meditate in those moments. Oh, I'm getting anxious. Let me just meditate to calm down. And I couldn't. And I couldn't understand why that isn't possible. I thought there was something wrong with me. Well, no, there's nothing wrong with me. It's like in that moment when that kind of anxiety is up, there's so much happening on the biological side of things that it's pretty impossible to just sit and meditate at that point. And it's actually counterproductive. A quick way to also help your nervous system is when you can't move, do a breathing technique. And what we want is to calm the nervous system. We want to have a longer out breath than an in breath. So I want you to take a breath in on the count of 4, then hold your breath to the count of 7, and then exhale to the count of 8. And then keep doing that a couple of times and notice how that impacts your system. That will help you calm your system. And then there are other things we can do because what we want to do in that moment is your body's feeling the danger, right? It's feeling like it's in danger, but you're not actually in danger, right? Everything's okay. So another thing I do is look around the room, maybe even touch things in the room to get to presence yourself where you are. Now, if that is happening in a meeting, just do the breathing, right? Obviously, you're not going to get up and touch the walls or look, but you can look around the room. You can anchor yourself to the room. So you can look around and just look at 3 things, identify 3 things to get yourself present and interrupt that thought process, because that's what we want to do. We want to interrupt that thought process and we want your body to feel safe. So breathing can be incredibly helpful. Breathing in to the count of 4, holding your breath to the count of 7, and then breathing out count of 8. And take a couple of breaths like that. Do that a couple of times. Then you also do the anchoring to the room and notice how your body is responding. Like if you find that with these practices that you're starting to yawn or you're starting to burp or your stomach starts gurgling, those are all great signs that tell you that your nervous system is shifting out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic state, which is what you want. It's where you're calm, the right rest and digest phase. All these practices can be incredibly helpful because we want to make sure the body feels safe. So that's an initial first step you can take, and that will help you calm your system, will help you be present in the moment so that you don't go into the freeze response, which then keeps your mind going, but it makes it impossible for you to be productive. So there's the options that you have, the breathing and also looking around the room, making sure you see your body is aware that there is no actual danger in this moment. So yeah, again, this isn't the moment to try and meditate your way out of it because your brain won't let you do that, right, during those times. It just might make it way worse. Instead, make your physical body feel safe and calm your system so that you can start building your capacity to be with those uncomfortable emotions that are there, right? Being in anxiety is not comfortable, but when we can learn to be with that and still then find a way to move on, which then is the next step, how do we increase the capacity to stay with it longer and longer, which is the part we cover in our program. We don't have time in this short podcast to go over that, but I wanted to give you at least something practical that you can do right now, today, if this happens to you, if you find yourself in a state of over worrying. And it's when you find that you start thinking about that and you catch yourself right then and there is when you intervene as quickly as possible, because that line of thinking just doesn't serve. And, sometimes you go down a spiral, even, all these things. I have a lot of tools and sometimes I go down a spiral, right? We're human. It's okay. But if you are like me and you want to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible, then we want to reduce the amount of times we allow ourselves to go down that spiral. Because what happens when we go down the spiral is we can't think anymore. Our rational mind is checked out. We can't make decisions. We get worse and worse. And then it just goes nowhere. It's not helpful. So the breathing exercise, like the 478 breath, gives your nervous system the signal that you're safe because your breathing slows down. Because typically when you're activated, you ever notice that when you're stressed out about something, you're barely breathing, or like your breath is really shallow and you don't breathe very often. Sometimes you hold our breath. So we want to counteract that and get some oxygen in our body and make our nervous system understand we're safe. Another reason why this is important is when we are in this activated state, we avoid situations we don't want to face, conversations we need to have, setting boundaries, doing certain tasks at work. Is there tasks that you find yourself putting off again and again and again and again until they absolutely have to be done? It's because we don't want to deal with the emotion that comes out and we feel worse and worse and worse about it. So stressing and worrying does take a toll on us and our body, but it doesn't really create a solution. So that's why we have to stop it and interrupt the pattern and do something different to make our body feel safe. Often the thing that we are worried about is actually easier to deal with than we might imagine because of all the scenarios, right? How many things have you worried about in the past that never actually happened, right? How much time have you spent thinking about stressing about something that then just never happened? I can't even tell you how much I've done that. And it served no purpose. It only stressed me out. If you can approach these situations as they come up with a sense of, oh, I know I can handle this. I can be with this. I have tools no matter what. And then it becomes easier and easier over time to stay present and to control your own patterns. It's easier to focus on what truly matters in the moment and what you actually have agency over. Our mind always wants to assume the worst because it's trying to keep us safe. So learning to live with this uncertainty is a key skill to cultivate because nothing really is certain, right? We think we create certainty by setting up our lives a certain way, by trying to control as much as possible. But the reality is there is no real true certainty. And the more we're able to lean into that and be okay with that, the easier life gets. It doesn't mean stuff doesn't come at us that is going to be hard, but we can build the resilience and the capacity to deal with it. Most of the time in life, we do find ourselves in situations where some aspect of what we're doing is out of our control, right? There is uncertainty, and we need to make a decision that feels most aligned with us in the moment and just move on. That's all we can do. And we can't control uncertain things or know for a fact that everything will turn out well. Nobody can do that. And that's why working with the body and not just the mind is essential. The ability to create that safety, that felt sense of safety in your body is so important. You don't just let it go by deciding to. You support your system so that letting go becomes possible. So as we wrap up today, just notice where this lands in your body. Maybe you recognized yourself in any of the examples, like that story about my family member with the medical procedure, or in the smaller everyday worries that quietly just drain your energy. Know that you're not alone and that you're not doing anything wrong. Your nervous system is trying to protect you in the best way it knows how. What you can do is start catching the spiral a little earlier, moving some energy through your body and making your body feel safe enough so that you can stay present to uncertainty instead of being swallowed up by it. That's the practice. So the tools we went over to do that is the 4-7-8 breath, right? In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. The orienting to the room, whether you touch objects or walls, doesn't really matter. That is an added, like if I'm really anxious, I might do that and I'm in a place where I can, if I'm home. But it's also really helpful and grounding to just look around and identify a few things and notice I am safe in this moment. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with someone who might be stuck in their own worry loop right now. And if you're curious about building more capacity and working with your nervous system in a deeper way, check out the link below, book a session with me, and I can tell you more about it. We can chat about whether that would be something that's helpful to you or not. Thank you so much for being here today, for tuning in, for doing this work, and for showing up for yourself in these small but really, really powerful ways. Until next Wednesday, have a lovely week.